nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Hewlin. Here. Parker.
Present.
Kling.
Here.
Schroeder. Present. Southall. Here. Marchant.
Present.
Mayor Pepper.
Present. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is open forum. We always start our meetings with that. If anybody's here that'd like to speak about something not on the agenda, now is your time. Please come forward. There's a public comment form. Please make sure you fill that out. Address all of council. 3 to 5 minutes is your time. And then when you come, please state your name and your address. No, just okay. All right. Hearing none, seeing none, we will move on to consent agenda. Anything we need to know about that?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull claims, 5B.
Okay.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay. All those in.
Oh, sorry, I want to make one comment
Sure.
on where was that out? It was one of the, I think it's G. It's the, nope, I'm sorry, one H. It's on H. It has to do with the change order for the Wesley Lift Station project. And just looking through that stuff, I just want to commend the staff and making sure that we're getting everything else up to date, because what I noticed was that while that's not a big change order and a lot of money, but it is kind of an important thing that they're changing the way the water levels will be evaluated, so that way they're more consistent and in line with all the rest of our whole system. And we've been piecemealing this for a while and getting it updated and caught up, and Rick's done a nice job of bringing that all together, and so that way it's when we come online with the new wastewater treatment facility, everything's going to work symbiotically, and so I appreciate that we're spending that time and that effort to get that taken care of. So I just wanted to point that out. That sometimes we overlook some of that stuff, and I just want public to understand that staff's doing a great job of making sure things run smoothly when you flush the toilet or turn on your shower or whatever. So
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Sorry, aye.
Southall.
Aye.
Marchant.
Aye.
Hewlin.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Kling.
Motion carries. Let's go back to claims on the computer printout for May 3, 2021. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Okay. Any comments? Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Kling.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Southall.
Aye.
Marchant.
Aye.
Hewlin.
Abstain.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ryan, can you just give a highlight of any of those things that are on consent, just so folks are aware of what's happening, please?
Sure. Really, Councilman Parker talked about the wastewater treatment plant, a number of the items on there. Langman Construction, the $1 million payment, that's the first payment towards the trunk line. So that's the main line that's connecting the old plant to the new plant. Payout for Vanderpool for the South Plant lift station. So again, that's one of the upgrades to make sure that all our lift stations are talking and in sync with the new wastewater treatment plant. And then a change order and then pay up to Vanderpool for the East Iowa Avenue paving project. If you recall, that's the project that the city got the federal economic development grant to fund half the construction or half the cost of construction to extend utilities out in front of Missouri Valley. The change order for that is tied to, it's in the packet, is tied to the fact that when we let the project, the city didn't have SUDAS adopted. SUDAS is a standard, our standard urban design specifications for how things are to be constructed. So it has, there's a certain connection for that the fire department required as part of SUDAS. So those are some of them. Then otherwise, it's just really the liquor license renewals and normal course of business.
Thank you, Ryan.
You are
Appreciate that. All right, moving on. Council reports is next with the mayor's report. First, just wanted to say I've been attending IMU meetings. I attended one last week. I will be there next week. We're swearing in Lori Smith, so we're excited to have her on board. End of April was volunteer week, volunteer appreciation week. So again, I always want to thank all of our volunteers, greatly appreciate the time and effort you commit to our city. And as a reminder, we are always looking for more. Please check out our website. There are many ways that you can be involved with our city, that you can use your time and talent, and we would greatly appreciate that. Waste Management emailed us to thank us on cleanup week. That was the end of April, and they said it really went very, very well, and they appreciated all the citizens following the rules on how to break that down so they could remove it easily. So thanks to all of our citizens. And then this past weekend, May 1st, was Shop Local Day. So thanks for supporting all of our local businesses. I know they appreciate it. You don't have to do it just once a year. You can do it all the time. I'm sure they would appreciate it, but thanks for being a part of that as well. All right, on to then community update. First one is a proclamation declaring May 2 through 7 as Public Service Recognition Week, May 4th as International Firefighters Day, May 9 through 15 as National Police Week, and May 16 through 22nd as National EMC Week. I'm going to read it. Here we go. Employee Recognition Month. Whereas the month of May includes Public Service Recognition Week, International Firefighters Day, National Police Week, and National EMS Week. And whereas the residents of Indianola are served every day by public servants. And whereas the public employees of the city of Indianola are committed to providing citizens with quality and ample services and strive to improve the livability of the community through personal dedication, integrity, accountability, innovation, sensitivity, public safety, education, and leisure programs and administrative services. And whereas public servants are driven by a desire to give back to others and to help those in need. And whereas public safety personnel protect citizens without wanting of recognition or reward and serve in our times of need with courage, compassion, and loyalty. And whereas at the moment's notice, firefighters are quick to respond to uncertain situations while risking their lives in order to protect our community. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas the members of the Indianola Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the residents and visitors of the city of Indianola. And whereas the dedication, training, and hard work of government employees often goes unrecognized despite the essential services they perform. And whereas public employees deserve to be recognized and acknowledged for their efforts, selfless service, and sacrifices. Therefore, I, Mayor Pam Pepper, do hereby proclaim May 2 through 7 as Public Service Recognition Week, May 4th as International Firefighters Day, May 9 through 15 as National Police Week, and May 16 through 22 as National EMS Week in Indianola. And I encourage all citizens to show support and appreciation to our public servants who work tirelessly to provide services required and expected by the public. Thank you to all of our public servants. We greatly appreciate all that you do. All right, moving on to old business. First item is third consideration of an ordinance amending the city code of City of Indianola, Iowa, converting certain streets from one-way to two-way and making necessary safety changes to accommodate the changes.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Charlie, I'm guessing you would like to talk about this.
I really don't need to talk about too much. Just if there's any questions for me, would be happy to answer. I'm going to quickly go through the slides that we have on here, and then I think AP is going to give it just a quick update to if this is approved, what happens from this point on. So this picture right here, we wanted to include that on there. The streets that are in blue are actually all of the current two-way streets in and around these corridors, with the streets in orange being the current one-way streets. So that kind of gives some perspective on exactly how many one-way streets we have amongst all of these two-way streets in this area here. And again, the streets that are going to be changed here, highlighted in that light teal blue, that is going to be converted from one-way to two-way. It's all of Howard and Buxton from Kentucky down to Highway 92 and then the four sides of the square. Where the new stop signs, our four-way stops will be located, essentially both of the intersections of Buxton and Howard with Iowa, Clinton, and then the four corners of the square. And then where the no parking will be, and this is really one thing we do want to emphasize, is that the parking restrictions that are currently in place on these roads is not going to change. It'll be the same as it is today. So with that, if there's any questions of me on the ordinance, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to AP, and he's going to quickly go over kind of what to expect after the ordinance, if the ordinance is passed here today.
Questions for Charlie? Thank you.
Thank you.
AP?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is AP, Public Works Director for City of Indianola. The slide you're seeing is the plan for our one-way to two-way conversion on Howard Street and Buxton Street. Basically, it's a three-phase a plan. The first phase is where we are planning to do the notifications, part of which has already started with the social media notifications. And then if the council approves the third reading of the ordinance to convert it to two-way, we will be installing warning signs for motorists to see. And you can see in the images in the slide is what we plan to have as warning signs. We will also be installing digital LED signs as a part of this. And then staff is also preparing to send out letters starting from tomorrow. During this week, we'll be sending out letters to property owners on Buxton and Howard Street to notify them about this change. And then our second phase is where we'll be preparing, once the council approves it, we will be installing permanent signs and temporary signs too. We will be removing the planters in the square. As a part of the permanent signs, we will be installing new always stop signs, new parking restriction signs. And then a day before the transition occurs, we will be installing temporary no parking signs. Now these will be along outside the square and along the direction of, or basically where cars are not parked along the direction of travel when it is converted to two-way traffic. So basically these temporary no parking signs will be installed on May 16th. And then on May 17th, when it gets converted, we will be removing the no parking signs. And then final phase where we plan on implementation is where, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention you that the permanent signs, we will be covering them from the day of installation to May 17th. And then on the day of implementation, we'll be removing the covers from the new signage. We'll be flipping the existing signs. And then we'll also be removing any signage that's related to one-way traffic control. So finally, we'll be working on the pavement markings, which is the painting, where paintings, we'll be prioritizing the pavement markings, the new pavement markings, based on whether it's regulatory or warning signs. Regulatory such as stop bars and parking will take first precedence over the warning signs such as crosswalks or sharrows. With that, I'll be concluding my session.
Questions for AP, Council?
No, but I have a comment. And my neighbor is looking forward to this. The weekend before last, we were out working our front porch. We had some repairs to make. And in the 4 hours we were there, there were 6 near collisions on Iowa and Buxton, and 3 people going the wrong way all the way up Buxton. So we're excited for this change to put that to an end.
That's not a good Saturday.
No.
No. All right, anything else? Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is resolution approving a contract with Iowa Plains Signing, Inc. to remove the pavement markings on Howard Street and Buxton Street in the amount not to exceed $13,417.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Questions? Brian, did you want to say something?
No, this is just tied to that conversion. So if there's any specific questions of what's coming out, or AP can answer those.
Okay. Questions for AP? Okay. Jackie, please call the roll.
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is tobacco sales violation. The first one, we need to strike the public hearing for complaints filed on Casey's General Store, 507 South Jefferson, on tobacco sales permit violations from the agenda and accept acknowledgement and settlement agreement for cigarette civil penalty. So I just need a motion that we will accept that settlement.
So moved.
Okay. Jackie?
Councilmember Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall, Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we're moving into a public hearing for Murphy USA regarding the mandatory $300 civil penalty prescribed by 453A.222A for the violation of Iowa Code Section 453A.21, selling, giving, or otherwise supplying any tobacco, tobacco products, or cigarettes to any person under 21 years of age.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Jackie?
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall.
Aye.
Thank you. We're in public hearing. If there's anybody here that would like to talk about this, please come forward. Seeing none, hearing none.
Motion to close the public hearing. Second.
Jackie, please.
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant.
Aye.
Motion carries. So then, consideration of the violation of Iowa Code Section 453A.21, selling, giving, or otherwise supplying any tobacco, tobacco products, or cigarettes to any person under the age of 21 years of age, and assessing a civil penalty in the amount of $300 against Murphy USA, 1502 North Jefferson, the retail permit holder.
So moved.
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is a public hearing for Indy West 929 regarding the mandatory $300 civil penalty prescribed by 453A.222A for the violation of Iowa Section Code 453A.21, selling, giving, or otherwise supplying any tobacco, tobacco products, or cigarettes to any person under 21 years of age.
Move to open the public hearing. Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now in a public hearing. Anybody here wishing to speak to this topic, please come forward. Seeing none, hearing none. Council? Want to close it?
Yes, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Jackie, please.
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant.
Aye.
Motion carries. Then that leads us to consideration of the violation of Iowa Code Section 453A.21, selling, giving, or otherwise supplying any tobacco, tobacco products, or cigarettes to any person under 21 years of age, and assessing a civil penalty in the amount of $300 against Indy West 929. Their address is 2001 West 2nd Avenue, the retail permit holder.
Move to approve as written, as
Second.
read. Sorry.
Second.
Okay. Jackie?
Councilmember Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving into new business. First item is presentation regarding the proposed micro-mobility regulations. I think Charlie's coming.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, Charlie DeSalle, Community Economic Development Director. Quickly, just wanted to go over timeline with this. You'll recall late last fall, we were approached by an electric scooter company who was wishing to place electric scooters with Indianola. At that point, we did reach out to both Simpson College and the Indianola Chamber to kind of gauge their interest and opinion on the matter. We then brought the matter to City Council on January 19th. City Council did direct us to kind of look at what needed to be done to make this possible within the city and take a look at all of our codes pertaining to it. So we went ahead and did that. We actually did use the assistance of Snyder and Associates to help us look through some of those codes. And it became apparent that our current codes really do not speak to anything micro mobility, electric scooters, electric bikes, or anything like that. So with that, we kind of looked at what we can do and how we could add them in. We thought they would fit pretty good in the bike code, the current bike code. We also took that opportunity then to make some changes to our bike code to really modernize what that code looks like. So we ran those proposed changes by the Police Department, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Parks and Recreation Commission. There was a memo I know that was included with your packet that kind of went over some of those discussions and ultimately what was placed in there. And I'm going to hand it over to Mindy Moore with Snyder and Associates. She's on Zoom here and gonna kind of go over some of the just high level stuff on there, but she's going to screen share on Zoom, so it'll be up on the TV here.
Thanks, Charlie. Let me see if I could get my screen share going here. All right, can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
All right, thanks. So I'm just gonna go, there's a lot of code within this ordinance that addresses a lot of different things, but I just wanted to highlight 3 particular issues that we talked about during this process. So the first of these issues is the bicycles and other electric devices, micromobility devices at the city square. So your current code does not allow biking on the sidewalks around the square, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It also doesn't allow biking on the sidewalks adjoining schools. So this revision allows biking and e-scooters and other micromobility devices to be located on sidewalks around schools. And then as far as around the sidewalks of the square, it still is not allowed. However, we just revised the language a bit to suggest that people just walk that bike or walk the device when they're on the sidewalks around the square. And I wanted to point this out because this was a major point of discussion at the Plan and Zoning Board of whether or not this should be allowed. There was argument for both directions to allow it and also not to allow it. The main concern there was about conflict with pedestrians, since this would be a high pedestrian area. There would be pedestrians going in and out of storefronts, and concern that there could be conflict with people biking or using micromobility devices. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The next item is with some legislation that's been under consideration at the state level. So this was actually, there was actually an approval of this proposed amendment after the Plan and Zoning meeting. So just a couple of weeks ago, they've been talking at the state level about low-speed electric bicycles. And this, as far as I know, is still pending the governor's signature, but it has gone through the legislature. So what they've done is they've added another definition for low-speed electric bicycles, and they've included these 3 classes of e-assist bicycles. And these are classes that are accepted across sort of the industry of e-assist bicycles. So class 1 provides assistance only when a person is pedaling the bike and only up to 20 miles per hour. The class 2 provides e-assist whether or not the person is pedaling, but also maxes out at 20 miles per hour. And class 3, again, only provides assistance when the person is pedaling, but its max speed is 28 miles per hour. So what they did at the state level was took these definitions and added them to the definition of a normal bicycle. So whether it's human powered or whether it's e-assist, it has essentially the same regulations at the state level. The exceptions to that are for those class 3 e-bikes because they go up to 28 miles per hour. They did add a provision that you have to be 16 years old to operate it. And they've also added this provision that they are subject to speed limits. And if there's no speed limit posted, they're subject to 20 miles per hour. And that makes sense on our trail system where we typically don't have a speed limit posted on a trail system. Most trails, or many trails, maybe I should say, I don't know about most, but many times we design our trails for 20 mile per hour design speed. That is pretty fast for a human powered bicycle, but it can happen. So that is limited for those class 3 e-bikes. So we revised the language after the Plan and Zoning Board to recognize these definitions and incorporate some of those regulations. The state amendment also has some requirements for the equipment and the manufacturing of the e-bicycles, but we didn't feel that was necessary to copy into your local ordinance since it's not an operational part of the requirements. And the last item I wanted to bring to your attention was the change lanes to pass code language. So we had, we've been working with the Iowa Bicycle Coalition and reviewed the draft ordinance with Mark Wyatt at the Iowa Bicycle Coalition. And he pointed out to me that in 2012, the Iowa Attorney General had issued this letter stating their interpretation of the state code, such that they said that a bicycle does essentially constitute a vehicle. So bicycle should be passed the same way that you pass another vehicle. And so this has kind of been an issue because this is one of the main ways, that bicyclists have been hit on the state's highways is from behind, or when a vehicle passes a bicycle that's biking on a highway. So essentially this says, so if a motorist is passing a bicycle who's biking in a travel lane, that motorist has to change lanes in order to pass them. And so the language that's in your draft ordinance is just making that interpretation from the Iowa Attorney General sort of crystal clear so it can't be misinterpreted. And essentially that's the three main things I wanted to point out, but if there's questions about any other sections of the ordinance, I'm happy to address those.
Mindy. Council, questions for either Charlie or Mindy?
Thank you. It looked like a lot of work.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. So 2 weeks ago, I was in San Antonio, and they have those down there, and it happens to be the same brand. Quite interesting. I said, just stood back and watched, and didn't partake. Wanted to one night, but my wife was kind of a fun hater, so we didn't do it. But anyway, it is an interesting thing. Now down there, obviously a little bit bigger area, but all the way around the outside of the Riverwalk, they're just everywhere. And I was concerned, when we start talking about this, everything I've heard from other people is like, oh, you don't want them, they're everywhere. They did actually do a really nice job of keeping them every morning. They were all lined back up where they belonged. And, in the evenings, on Friday and Saturday night, they were kind of scattered, but it was amazing. There'd be one sitting outside of a restaurant or whatever, and somebody'd get on it and go, and part of me was like, gosh, if I went in and had it and come out, it's gone every time. That thing. But it was interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how it works here. So I think this is kind of a cool, good thing. So
Thanks for that personal interaction.
Yeah.
Good to know. Ryan.
Mayor, just to add, so the codes of the code provision would allow for the use of scooters by anybody, not just a company. If and when this is approved, we do have to go through the other step of working with the company that was desirous of coming here and work on some sort of license agreement, so we can make sure that we put in those requirements that they be placed certain areas, and kind of talk. If you recall the presentation that we gave back in January, one of the examples I think they had was like UC Berkeley, where they could designate the routes and where it can't go. So that would be the next step after we get past the code requirement.
and we definitely don't want them on the square. I mean, you want them on the square, but not on the street. You don't want them up on the sidewalk, because that was one thing down there. On every one of them had "do not ride on the sidewalk." That didn't keep everybody off of the side. Usually it was the younger kids that were on the sidewalks, but adults for the most part rode in the street. But yeah, we put them up on the square.
If individuals have their own, they don't have to be licensed, correct?
They don't have to be.
Or do they?
No, and I think and Mindy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, if so on, but I think our code covers that, is they don't have to be licensed. You don't have to get like a driver's license or anything like that to get them. And then I think with our last codification, took out the actual bike licensing requirement that used to be in our code, because we weren't doing that anymore either. So, and Mindy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate in how the code is written.
Yep, that's correct. There's no license requirements for operating.
but
For
you
for
follow the same
individuals,
rules.
for individuals.
For individuals,
Yep.
right? No.
All the same rules.
I do have a question. I don't know who to direct it to, but I see all the policies, the responsible writing, all that. So what if they do something against this? Is it a ticket or like who, what,
No, I'm
what
just
is,
kidding.
like, what is that?
Yeah,
I
we-
see all these rules. I'm like, who's gonna make
So,
sure?
and
they're
we
doing
actually, we had legal review this, and that was one of the comments that we did get on some of the responsible writing stuff was, the enforcement thing and how you do that. It's not the easiest thing in the world because some of it, with any enforcement, you got to be able to prove that something happened. We felt that it was appropriate to include it within the language though, because it does kind of present a guide that we can give. And then as we even farther talked with Doug and Parks, if there's ever a time where we want to put some signage on the trails that kind of, some etiquette or stuff like that, at least we have something to base that off of.
Thank you.
And if something does happen, then it is enforceable.
Yeah,
So-
right. Yeah, it's good to have
Yeah.
some sort of guidance of
Well-
expectation.
When these were all over Spain, big cities, but I think their speed limit was a little higher than what I.
Other comments, questions? Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mindy, for joining us as well. We'll move into
Thank you.
first consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 76 bicycles and adding in micromobility regulations.
Move to approve. Second.
Comments?
I do just have one quick question. I want to make sure I understand. So, one of the things I did note as I was reading through this is that this does not affect, just want to make sure it's clear that people that have to use a battery powered scooter or whatever, for just to get around, this has no effect over them. They can use the square and everything else, correct?
Charlie's nodding yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I thought I understood that, but I wanted to make sure.
I'm glad you pointed it out
Yeah.
too. We don't want people to.
And I would say too, back to what you said, John, that when we get to the point where we're negotiating, it's the leaving them, overnight and that kind of thing. That's been my experience, is seeing them just randomly,
Yeah, right,
abandoned in
right.
in different areas, and that's a little concerning. So, but we can work with that.
Jackie, please.
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is resolution authorizing submittal of a COVID-19 relief recreational trails program grant application to the Iowa Department of Transportation for North Jefferson Way and South Jefferson Way trail connections. Here comes Doug. Hi, Doug.
Check out everyone. Mayor and council, it's Doug Byland, the Parks and Recreation Director. What we have here in front of you is just a resolution to seek approval of applying for a state of Iowa's COVID-19 relief recreational trails program. As a part of this, when it was announced in April, we looked through our trail plan that we do have and tried to find locations that would fit the requirements between $500,000 and $1.25 million. That's a part of the grant application. So we identified these two areas along highways, or I should say highway 65, 69, but north and south Jefferson ways. The north connection, which you should have in your packet, connects that Hillcrest Avenue up to Trail Ridge Avenue there by Casey's, and will help us with when we're talking about doing trail connections farther to the west and to the north of the community as well. And then the second section is the connection to the neighborhoods south of Plainview, and then that will also kind of jumpstart future connections to the south and the west along East 17th Avenue, which heads over towards Downey Park. And then also talks about our trail plan future toward the east, toward the middle school. So what we're looking for today is just to get a resolution to approve the grant application. This isn't a final project or anything like that. What we would need to do if we did receive the grant, we'd need to reprioritize our trail projects that we already have for fiscal year 23 and 24. Because this will still be a couple year project before we even build it. I know some of you got contacted about neighbors about what this entails. What the map shows the exact location, and it's just a high level general idea of where these trails proposed could go. As part of the project, we would have to go through engineering and evaluation to determine if it needs to go farther east, farther west, different direction, you know, look at stormwater, so many other utilities, other things too. So this is just to try to apply for the grant and then try to use these funds so we can get more trails.
And conversations with landowners would happen
Oh,
if
yeah.
and when
Yep.
it's down the road.
Similar to what we've done in Cherry Kelly Trail, or we're going to be doing on the next phase of Cherry Kelly Trail too. So have public meetings and so on.
Questions? Thank you, very helpful.
Second.
Jackie, please.
Councilmember Merchant,
Aye.
Hewlin. Aye. Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder. Aye. Southall.
Aye. Motion carries. Good luck. I hope we get this grant. On to other business. Discussion and direction on insurance renewals. Our friends from Holmes Murphy are here to join us tonight. So I think we turn it over to them, correct? Or to Courtney?
Oh, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Gail Steffen from Holmes Murphy, and this is Alicia Wilhite from Holmes Murphy also. I'm moving a little slow. I hurt my back doing something in the garden or the yard or something, so this is going to help us. But if you recall, we were here March 10th to do a pre-renewal meeting. We were here April 7th to present the renewal, and tonight we are here to seek consensus and direction on the employee benefits plan for July 1st.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. So you'll see we just have a few decision points that we wanted to bring forward to you this evening. We'll start with the medical. That's obviously our highest spend item here at the city. What Wellmark came back with is basically a 3.5% increase to the total annual expected cost. This is obviously always an estimate with the city being self-funded. We pay the claims as they come in. But Wellmark did hold your expected claims flat, and we had an increase to the stop loss. What that equates to is actually a 1.2% increase over where the budget is set today. So it's a 3.5% increase over what Wellmark projected last year, but compared to where we're actually funding, it's that 1.2% increase. If you look at Holmes Murphy's budget analysis, we actually did some reforecasting based on where you guys are running today from a claims perspective. And we are seeing and estimating that we will finish the year 30% below where we budgeted. So we're in a really good position financially. And a lot of that is just really due to low claims costs this year. I know we talked about that at the prior meeting, but we just haven't seen the utilization that Wellmark thought we would this year. So going off that, we do have a few things that we wanted to bring you. And the first one, you'll see I kind of have these laid out by optional decisions and then recommendations. The first option that you guys have is to increase your specific stop loss deductible. Right now, that is at $50,000. So for every belly button on the plan, all members, the first $50,000 is the city's responsibility. After that, we have insurance that kicks in to cover the rest of those claims. We did look at analysis if we increase that dollar amount to $60,000 per person and to $75,000 per person. You can see the option to increase the specific deductible to $75,000 is an estimated savings of $61,000. That comes from two parts. First, a $141,000 savings in fixed costs. And then we have to add on to that some additional claim liability since we're increasing the coverage that we're going to pay on each person. Based on our analysis, our actuaries think there's only a 1% chance that you guys would ever exceed that where your costs are going to outweigh your savings on that. So our recommendation would be to move to that $75,000 specific stop loss level. The next item, two items are actually prescription drug based. So the first one that you can see there is the Value Plus Formulary. What that change does is removes tier 4 medications from the formulary. These are usually lifestyle type of drugs, so more expensive, not as efficient drugs as we see in tiers 1 through 3. Wellmark makes that determination with the help of their pharmacy team as to what drugs fall where. we have one person that is taking a drug today that would be impacted. That drug would not be covered unless they filed an appeal with Wellmark and was able to continue to receive that. The total plan cost is $888 annually, so it's a lower cost. It's more of a long-term savings play because right now we have such low impact if we were to implement that. If that number grows higher and we find ourselves in a position where we need to make that change, we would impact more members at that time. The next is the CVS Copay card program. Again, no rate impact on this, but we are recommending this change because we do not have any members that would be affected today. This would require anybody taking a specialty medication to fill their prescription through CVS's mail order program. Again, this is a long-term savings play. Wellmark has the best discounts negotiated with CVS. So if we implement that now, we avoid some savings down the road by having those members fill all their prescriptions through the mail order program. The final thing that we did look at that we just wanted to bring to your attention is the fully insured quote. We do look at this every year just to make sure that self-funding is in your best interest, and that is a 3.7% increase. We do find that that matches pretty much spot on with Wellmark's expected rates, but we know that you guys are running below that, so we would not recommend that change at this time. Questions on any of those decision points?
Council, comments, questions? Anything with the information provided?
Looking good so far.
Perfect. There are a few new programs for 2021. You'll see here a couple of these are automatic plan changes, so no decision points to be made here, but just wanted to make you guys aware of those. An RX Savings Advisor program, which will just be an enhancement to members to help them kind of navigate those prescription drugs that they may be taking. And then a new tier within the pharmacy to include the Omnipod Dash, which is a diabetic medication. The other one that is changing, it is an optional change. We are recommending that the city go ahead and move forward with it. It is enhancing the nutritional counseling. This is a change that Wellmark is making across their fully insured book of business. And it just adds new categories so that if a member has one of these chronic conditions, nutritional counseling for that condition would be covered under the plan. Very, very low impact to the plan from a cost perspective. Wellmark estimates $129 annually per utilizing member, and we do not see that this is a benefit that's highly utilized. So very low cost share to implement that. Okay, down to the budget decision. So currently we have the budget set at an accrual rate of $1,356.71 per employee per month, with the employee paying 12% of that and the employer paying 88% of that. We have two options that we've laid out here. One, keep medical rates flat for both employer and employees. That is what we are recommending for the 2021 plan year. The other option would obviously be to lower the medical rates, since we know that we have that large reserve built up and Wellmark isn't really estimating a large cost increase for 2021. The only reason we are not recommending that is we oftentimes find ourselves, a few claims can really flip that upside down. This will help us really hold costs steady over future years rather than making a one-time change this year and then having to increase that back up next year. The other decision point is really on that reserve balance. So as we discussed in our prior meetings, there is quite a reserve balance out there because the plan has run better than expected. We have a few options that we've laid out here for you guys to take a look at. If we increase the specific stop loss, we could keep that reserve balance as kind of a safety net in case we do see a big uptick in claims. Like I said, the estimated maximum liability would be $143,000 to the plan. So it's not probably going to put much of a dent in that reserve, but that is one option. The other option would be to give a one-time HSA contribution to employees. This would allow them to basically get those dollars. If they have claims, they can use those HSA dollars to pay those claims in that year, or they can, if they don't have the claims, they keep that money in their account. So it is a way to use that reserve to give back to the employees. Again, we would communicate that's a one-time special HSA contribution, so they know that can change going forward and maybe not to expect that every year. And then the final option, of course, would be to lower the medical rates to spend down that reserve. Like we mentioned earlier, we're not recommending that approach. Okay, any questions on the medical decisions? We do have a few other ancillary products that we need to make decisions on. So the dental plan did get a 9% increase from MetLife, which is the current carrier. It's a 1-year rate guarantee, so an increase of just over $7,000 annually for the dental plan. We did take this out to market just to make sure that we're getting the best deal we can. And we did get a few competitive options. So obviously we can renew with MetLife. We did take these options to MetLife and let them know that we have competitive quotes on the table to see if that would lower their quote at all. And unfortunately, they were not comfortable doing so. So their renewal holds at 9%. We do have a quote from Lincoln Financial Group and Mutual of Omaha. To move to Lincoln Financial Group would be a 6% decrease over the current rates that we have today. Mutual of Omaha did offer 2 options. So one would be a 10% decrease to our current rates with a 1-year rate guarantee. They did also offer a 2-year rate guarantee, which would mean a 5% decrease. So it's really just a matter of, whether or not we want to look at this again next year, or if that 2-year rate guarantee is worth that 5%. Holmes Murphy is comfortable with either of these carriers as an option. We work with both carriers. Mutual of Omaha is the city's current life and disability carrier, so you would have that kind of packaged program there. And both options do have significant network overlap, so employees would be able to continue to see the same providers that they do today. We do, just full transparency, we do probably have more dental experience with Lincoln Financial Group if that weighs in your decision at all, but we would be comfortable with either of those as a carrier for the city.
Is the coverage the same and out of pocket?
So the coverage is the same. Lincoln Financial and Mutual of Omaha did both offer a slight enhancement to the plan, and that really gets down to network. So they're increasing their usual and customary rate to 95%. All that means is that if an employee sees an out-of-network provider, they'll pay what 95% of other dentists in the area would pay for that same service. Right now, your plan with MetLife pays at 90%. All that means is the chance that an employee gets a bill from the dentist paying that balance is slightly lower with either Lincoln or Mutual. Okay. The vision is a 3% increase, which is a very small dollar spend. It only equates to $411 annually, and that's a 2-year rate guarantee. Our recommendation would be if there's no employee complaints or administrative issues, that we move forward with that renewal as is with the visa. Finally, life and disability. So there are no changes in the rates. As I said, this coverage is with Mutual of Omaha today, and the total annual spend on these lines is just under $53,000. We have a few options here. Obviously, we can renew as is. There's no change to the rates, so everything would continue to run the same way. We did, however, do an analysis of the short-term disability and long-term disability plans that are in place today. One of the options would be to increase the weekly benefit maximum that an employee could receive if they're out on leave. It is currently at $450 per week that the employee could receive. And we found that this actually does not cover any of the employee's salaries up to 60%. So if I go out on leave, 60% of my salary could be replaced up to $450 with the income and salaries of the employees at the city. No one would get up to that true 60% benefit. If we increase that to $1,000 per week, we would cover then 77 out of the 109 employees at that true benefit. And it's actually 70% for short-term disability. So really just gives employees more of a benefit. Right now, what we're communicating is a 70% benefit, but it really doesn't hit that target. There is an increase in annual cost on that. So you can see here, $26,730 is what we would pay today. That would increase to $47,165 if we made that change. This is probably the more commonly used benefit of short-term disability and long-term disability, so this would probably have the bigger impact on your employees. But we did also review the long-term disability benefit. If we increased that monthly maximum to $6,000, we would cover 108 out of 109 employees at the true 60% benefit. We're currently covering 98. That's a really low annual cost on the LTD. If we increase that benefit from 5,000 to 6,000, it's a $900 annual increase from that 17,992 to 18,893. Are there questions on that? I know that can be kind of confusing if you're not familiar with disability coverage on what those terms exactly mean.
So option 3 is inclusive of option 2.
It is. It doesn't have to be. You could have an option 4 that's just doing the long-term disability as well. We felt the short-term disability was a little more important to point out just because we currently have no employees that are getting their full benefit out of that line of coverage.
The short term is much more frequently used than the
Yeah.
long term. So if you're trying to, if you're trying to do the right thing and to give the employees the benefit that they truly think they have, that's what you should do.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was the short-term disability we were talking about. So yeah.
Yep.
Other questions?
Okay. Those are really the decision points that we have left to make for renewal. The game plan would be to finalize decisions so we can move forward with open enrollment towards the middle end of May and get employees packets and all their 2021 benefit information.
Right.
Can we, for the purpose of this, can we go back through your presentation, Alicia, and just get to the decision points and maybe take them one by one?
Thank you, Ryan. That's exactly what I was thinking.
I think the biggest ones, the stop loss and the HSA are the two that would have the biggest impact as a follow-up to the March 10th meeting. The stop loss, obviously, if you're taking on more of that risk, there's that reward as well. And our employees have done a really good job of managing their health and working with this program, which is why it's been performing better than expected. So we're in a completely different place than December 21st, 2015. So we've got this luxury to be able to talk about this now. But it does, if you take on more risk, think of it like a car deductible. If your car deductible is $500 and you're comfortable with going up to $750, you're going to see that savings, but you're also going to pick that up if you have an accident. But that would have an impact on the reserves.
So do we want to go through these each with council kind of saying yes or no?
But that's also with the probability of only 1%.
Correct.
Right. I'm definitely supportive of going to the 75.
Right. I would agree.
And I think it's important that you noted the 1% again.
Yes.
That's,
Right.
I mean, that's a
Agreed.
huge part of the decision
Right.
as far as I'm concerned.
And then it's a probability, not a possibility. So, big difference.
And we spent a lot of time, we had a staff meeting with IMU and city council. We spent a lot of time with Holmes Murphy going through that calculation and what we would need to hit it. And I think the number was 5. If we hit 5, then that's when the savings would, 5 additional would dissipate.
Additional from the 50,000. So 5 more people would be in that corridor between 50 and 75,000.
So my question is, we have 2 folks from the IMU board with us. Does council vote on this and IMU votes on this, but we both have to be lockstep?
We need direction. There's nothing, you're not voting on anything right now. This is just purely direction. The reason being is they need direction so they can get us the documents that we can then get before the council and IMU board to vote on. And the reason for that is, as Alicia mentioned, we have to do open enrollment. So there's a lot of paperwork and information that HR has got to work with Holmes Murphy on getting. And then we've got to produce all the materials to send out to all the staff to let them know what their options are, what the materials mean.
But we are together in the fact that if the city council says, change the stopgap, they have to change the stopgap. We can't be at two different levels, because we are all on the same
Right, and
plan.
that's,
Just to
right,
make
I
sure.
mean, it's one
Even though-
plan.
yeah.
It's one plan, and that's, I mean, that's why the joint meeting on March 10th, and then we had the joint staff meeting on April 7th to go through that. So the recommendations that you see here are a joint recommendation from city staff and IMU staff along with Holmes.
So
What's next?
all of those everybody feels fine with?
Yes.
Everybody knows how we're proceeding? Okay, perfect. Do you wanna flip the slide?
Do we need to? Is that this thing? Is that the?
This is on the nutritional counseling enhancement.
Fine.
Again,
There's no reason not to do.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly. I
I
agree. I
agree.
think
I
it is.
agree. Perfect, okay. Good.
Next would be keeping the accrual rate the same as it is today.
Yeah,
I agree.
And then the next would be that reserve balance discussion.
I guess I would be interested in doing the one time, kind of as a, hey, you guys have done a nice job as staff. You've taken the ownership of the insurance and your health. And, here's what we're going to do, type of a thing. I don't, obviously that number would be just decided on at a later date, but.
You're talking about the HSA?
Yeah, I think to me that makes sense.
So option 2 is what you're
Yeah,
recommending there?
that's kind of my
Okay.
choice, yeah.
I agree.
Council, other thoughts?
I didn't say I'm gonna give it all back,
I'd like to
My comment, ma'am?
of it is ours.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Adam has to say about that. I know you have a lot of experience with this in your professional life, so.
Yeah, just to add to it, I guess my suggestion would be is before we get to a decision on what we do with the extra reserve, that we consider what level of reserve is appropriate. I don't know that we've gotten to that. I mean, I know we have an existing policy in place that we're following, but I think there needs to be some further discussion on that. And I guess if you guys are supportive of that, I'd like to see both the staff of the city and IMU get together and talk about different options for what that reserve policy should be first. And then maybe we can consider a staff recommendation on, assuming there is excess, which I think there is, as we talked about last time, what do we do with that?
Right.
That's to me a secondary decision.
Was that anything that would hold up this process?
Right, that's what I was thinking, the
Employees
same
can
thing.
renew their.
Right. I don't think
Yeah,
that,
yeah, no, I don't.
I don't think we have any
HSA
issues.
HSA contributions would normally take place January.
Okay, as long as we're not doing
Anything to mess up
anything to
renewals.
stop the process.
And I like the idea of a contribution at one time, if,
Yes.
I really do.
If
I do
if
too,
it's there.
because
and-
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
agree. I mean,
kind of a benefit. for-
determine where we're at. Then I don't-
And just for those watching at home, the deductible, as part of the health insurance plan redo back in 2016, 2017, the deductible is a $5,600 deductible for families. So it's, and we talked about that and how we compare to our peers, both in the private sector and public sector. So we are higher. But once the employees hit that deductible, it is at the 100% out of pocket max. So it is, I mean, that's why we have the HSA. It's a high deductible plan. And typically those are coupled with the HSA.
Did you say that's per individual or per family?
That's for family, for single, it's what, 20?
32.
Are you looking for the deductible?
The deductible for single.
2,800 per person up to 5,600 for the entire family.
I guess for me, the key is that money stays with the employee rather than going into the pockets of Principal or Walmart or any of the other insurance companies. That's the whole idea of how this plan works. And so Adam was saying, we have a point where this is the level we're at and we're comfortable keeping it at that level, then the rest, anything overage, to me, it's got to go back to them. That's the whole idea of why we did this.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to that though is that employees only contributed to at a certain level, the
Right.
12%. I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yep.
And so it was really IMU and the city that can also contributed to that
Right,
fund.
right.
So I don't disagree with where you guys are going, but I think we need to think about that we really in some ways overpaid both on the city side and the IMU side into this fund that's resulting in this reserve. It's not just all coming out of employees' pockets.
So don't return it all to
So
the
don't
employees.
return
Right.
it, yeah.
Right.
Not that I don't want
Right.
to support employees.
No, I
I don't want to give the wrong impression.
Totally agree with
No,
you.
I think that's a good thing to point out.
And that's why it wouldn't be an ongoing thing, it'd be one time.
And evaluate if that number we decide at holds and still works, because again, a big claim year, it's gonna throw that
Well,
reserve off.
And that's one thing that Gail spoke about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at the March 10th meeting, when we talked about the performance, especially this last year, so we had a really good performance, but a lot of those elective surgeries were shut down. So to get a really good grasp of what happened, I mean, if you think about, I think it was last year, last renewal, I think we had like a 12 to 18% increase. It was 2 years ago. But so this year is kind of that anomaly. We don't necessarily know how
Right.
because of COVID.
Next question. I'm curious, philosophically, what's the difference between giving a one-time contribution and lowering monthly rates? I don't understand the difference there. Why we recommend one.
So if you do a one-time contribution, but you're saying to your employees, thank you for the good claims year, things are well. If you have a claim, you can use this money to pay the claim. So in essence, you're going to have a better policy, right? Because their deductible is funded by the gift that's given with the contribution. If you lower the premium, what happens the next year? You have to raise it.
Raise it.
Yeah, we never recommend going up and down on premium contribution. You know, once the trajectory is set, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go back and forth and back and forth. It can be done, it is your decision, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, to be moving that value around each and every year.
I don't disagree with that, but I guess based on the numbers that we've seen in our claims history over the last 3 years, it's been fairly consistent. And so assuming that we can use it as an indicator. I'm not going to say do that.
And I think if this were not a COVID year, I would have different views. We were 30% under the utilization that Walmart had indicated we would be this year. That's kind of a scary number, you know, from the actuarial side. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything as off. And Adam, I mean, you can speak to that too. It's just an aberration of a year, and I have a reluctance to use that as data.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think we take a look at the couple years prior to that. I think we're having track with this.
Just one thing, Mike, you might remember when we were going through the plan design change, the fluctuation was a concern for the employees. So there's an impact on morale. So if you do reduce it, that is a positive. But then if you do have a significant increase, in order to make sure that you're raising, because we are self-insured, so we've got to make sure we're funding that properly, funding our pot properly. So now if you have to make that jump back up, the employees are taking the hit, and that is a negative to the morale. So.
Next item.
So why don't we keep moving through these decisions, and then let's have a meeting to talk about reserves here very soon. We can get that coordinated, scheduled.
And the one thing, just going back, the stop loss, yes, I mean, we talked about that. It is that I mean, it will be interesting to see how that does play out throughout the year. Yes, the actuaries say a 1% chance, the 5 additional could have an impact, but it could have a negative impact on the reserve. So we'll want to make sure we give it time as well.
Let's have that reserve conversation sooner than later. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, next decision point is the dental, and if we want to move that from MetLife for savings there.
I kind of like option 4. That's a 2-year savings.
And more consistency for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
It also matches it with the vision, So both divisions, that what, 2 years?
Yep.
I like that.
That's good.
Yep.
You know, Delta Brown, where they factored into that, where they included.
They were included. They actually declined to quote because they were not competitive on the rates.
Yep. Thank you.
I also like option 4 because of the 2-year rate. I mean, obviously, it's a good 5% decrease. It's nice to know for 2 years.
Yeah.
We're fine with either 3 or 4. So 4 is
Okay, and then vision, not really a decision point there as long as everybody's good with keeping that the same.
Yep.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
And then finally, back to that short-term disability, long-term disability decision.
I think option 3.
Just do doing both of them.
That way you're doing I think the short term is the most used, and I think we've got to get it back to a level that's fair to the greatest majority of employees, at least to hit that 60% rate, get it up to 1,000. And the long term is the $900. At that point, why not? The most expensive is short term. And I think we really need to get the short term in a more favorable position for employees.
how often is short-term used?
Unfortunately, we don't get specific experience, but that was actually one of the things that was brought up by Mutual of Omaha this year is that your guys' loss ratio is running a little high. So we know it is being utilized. I think what employees are doing today, and Courtney could speak if I'm incorrect on this, but they're really filling that gap with some sort of other, sick time, vacation time, using up some of those dollars to give them.
And that, this level of analysis was brought up because as Courtney was going through the plan documents, working with Alicia, because we were having some short-term disability applicants, that kind of highlighted that we were out of whack with some of our peers, and then also the plan, just what was being communicated wasn't, the plan design didn't necessarily jive.
So does that rate jump time to time because of being used so much, or how does that work?
It does. At the size that you guys are at, they're not going to base your entire renewal on your own experience. They're going to look a lot at their entire block of business and see how that's running. But they did specifically mention that you could have increases next year because your short-term disability is running higher.
It is a good check from time to time, the salaries ratchet up.
Yeah, so the idea is when we stand in front of an employee at open enrollment and say you would have 70% income replacement if you were to be disabled, most people probably don't check any further into that and think that they're going to get 70% and everything's good and dandy until they do go out and they get that check from Mutual of Omaha for $450 and they think, wow, that's not close to 70% of what I bring home. So it's really just, education on the employee's part and whether or not they're aware of that. But this does get everybody just a little bit closer to making sure that they're being properly communicated with.
I appreciate that shores that.
Yeah.
Because at that point you already have something drastic going on in your life. You don't need that shock too. So.
Yeah, and these are post-tax benefits. So the employee is going to pay tax on that benefit as well. So that's even another piece that kind of gets them a little further away from that true 70%.
Okay. Do you have direction? Option 3, what I heard? Yes. Option. Okay.
I'm just troubled by it's being used, but anyway.
Yeah, I would like to have further discussion on that, like why we think
I guess I
this
don't.
is probably not the time, but why we think
A
it's.
lot of that stuff's gonna be covered by HIPAA.
Right, I
Right.
get it, but
Right.
Do you have a Andy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Do we need to have approval on the open enrollment date or can we look back here?
I think
That's been normally administrative.
Yep.
So,
questions. Okay.
but the plan documents will be prepared for council approval, May 17th, and then, for the IME board, I don't know what meeting that would fall. Probably.
Following week.
Next Monday or the if I need it before.
I mean, mean, as long as we've got some concurrence, I mean, okay, so I guess we'll get it as quickly as we can.
Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, I mean, we can't speak for our whole.
Yeah.
But just Ed and I don't think we're in agreement on most things. So I don't see. Would be the one guy on prescriptions.
Right.
Well-
Maybe that's a discussion to have.
That was actually that was a main discussion during our April 7th staff meeting. And it was actually IMU staff that really spent a lot of time talking about that. I think the big thing when we concluded that was the fact that there is that appeal process to go through. And obviously we have the resources to have that whatever that employee is go through that program. And have some assistance through Holmes Murphy and other resources we have.
And it's nice to have that, and I understand that there's no assurances that that appeal is.
Right.
But you can't do everything for one person.
No, I don't disagree, but if we want to talk about morale, we're actually taking something away from somebody. I understand there's only one person. I wouldn't want to be that person, but that's all I can say.
So my recommendation is IMU vote on it at your next meeting, next week. Just because if renewals are gonna go 17 through 28, it'd be better if you're the 10th and we're the 17th then. Okay.
Yeah, if you guys need additional information on that, what the appeal process looks like, how that works, let us know.
We'll talk with Chris, the general manager, but I wonder if one or both of you might be worth joining us for that meeting. I'd like to go through a similar presentation.
Thank you to our Holmes Murphy team. Thank you, Mike
Thank
and Adam, for being here for our part. We appreciate it. All right, we're gonna keep moving on. City Manager's report, Ryan Waller.
Just receive and file correspondence.
Okay,
Motion to receive and file correspondence for April 16th and 23rd of 2021 from City Manager Ryan Wallace.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mayor, I got one thing on our other business.
Yes, John?
Last council meeting, some comments were made and received a couple of emails from some folks asking me to apologize for my comments. I went back and listened to what was said and reviewed it again, and I'm not going to back off and apologize for what I said. I didn't do anything, didn't say anything that wasn't factual, and it's a hypocrisy. So I'm going to call it good and done. And like I said, two people have emailed me. They know that I took it up here at the council meeting. So.
Thank you, John. The next item on our agenda is enter into closed session in accordance with Iowa Code Section 21.51C to discuss strategy with legal counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent and where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the government.
I so move.
Second.
Okay. Before we vote, just a reminder that once we go into closed session, the only item remaining on our agenda is to adjourn. So thank you for joining us. Jackie, I'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going into closed session here in just a minute. Thank you for joining us. Yes, you can go to the back room.